Alright, I swear I'm here. If there's an empty chair, then that's a mistake. Anyway, yes. It's music time once again, and I am not running late exactly. I just was getting coffee, and it took a little bit longer than than I anticipated, mainly because I kept filling it. Anyways, it's beside the point. Yeah, we're here. First week of October, and I'm kind of getting everything in order here. Long story short, we have an average week in terms of length. There are 14 releases. That is kind of the number that I shoot for better or worse. And this week is honestly split very evenly. We have 3 releases in rap and hip hop, which is what we're going to start with. We have 3 releases in electronic music. We have 3 releases in rock and metal. And then we have 4 releases in pop and indie. And then there's one last one there at the end that we're going to talk about, which is kind of a new album. It's kind of a reissue. And it's also an album that brings up a topic of discussion. We're going to have a few topics of discussion this evening as well, but we'll get to them in due time. So I am quickly scrambling to get my notes open here on my laptop because that's how I read them while we're doing this. And I hope everyone is doing well. If you are, be sure to do the usual YouTube stuff, hit the like button, write a snarky comment. I don't know, whatever people do during YouTube live streams. Let's get down to business, shall we? Okay. So the first album that we are going to talk about is and I am going to drag myself over a little bit. I try to keep the background out as much as possible. The first album we have here is this. I love the album artwork here. This is the EP Извините за ожидание. Sorry for the wait. And the artist is Kid Soul. It's 3 tracks, very short. I listened to this a number of times. Obviously, it's super, super short. It's like 6 minutes long. Every single time it was going, I just kept thinking of the early years of Drake, right? When Drake was still young and hungry and kind of a no-name. And honestly, that's about the best compliment you can give somebody who is working in that sort of R&B rap genre. So let's check out Kid Soul here. Wait, my bad. There we go. It's got a little bit of the old Drake energy. Я надеюсь, что вы счастливы. Так хотел быть рядом, но вы. Помню вас, как бы там ни вышло. Эту песню посвящаю для всех своих бывших. Я в Камаро расхищаюсь Кутузов в 3. И внезапно подумаю о том, что хорошо, что я один, ведь с ними сложно. Но я точно оставил все это в прошлом. И из нас никто не виноват. Просто вышло так. Совершал ошибки, я учел эти ошибки, чтобы я мог идти дальше сам. Будет день, я вспомню каждую из них, каждую, кто сделал больно, каждый, что любил. Думаю, им было больно, так же, как и мне. Но я знаю, боль это проходит. Пусть они будут счастливы с теми, кто их любит. Я найду себе другую. So, definitely got that early Drake sound. I feel like if you're familiar with the early Drake sound, then you will recognize this. Red, snarky comment, very snarky, very on point. It's music like this that, like, I don't think of Drake at all. I haven't thought about Drake musically in ages because he just hasn't done anything interesting. But then you hear music like this, or at least I hear music like this, and I'm like, God damn, like, so good back in the day. It was like 15 years ago, but still. Like, even the musical shift there, it's like straight up early Drake. But now this is definitely a bit more of the sort of modern Russian hip hop sound, but it's definitely still.
Твои ожидания не моя проблема. И то, где мы сейчас, лишь ты виновна в этом. Я теперь скажу другое, это мой метод. Я хочу тебя прямо сейчас, у меня нету слов. Завожу тебя без ключа, для меня это бон. Французский поцелуй, о бонжур, j'appelle Kino. Сначала ты и я, всю любовь ставлю на потом.
So, yeah. Really nice EP. Kid Soul is an artist who has been doing this kind of rap R&B type sound for a number of years now, maybe even upwards of 5. But this is the first that I had ever heard of him. I'm just going to be honest there. And I hope the rest of his catalog is like this. If not, then at the very least, we have these 3 tracks right here on the EP. Извините за ожидание. Up next, we have an album which this is not a selling point, but it's one I want to discuss. The album is Любовь, побеждает, смерть, or Love Triumphs Over Death. Such a ridiculous. Okay. And the artist is Playing the Angel. Does have good album artwork, though. I will get that. I actually probably should have included it in the thumbnail. It is pretty cool. I did like the album artwork. This is an album that is going to be very popular. I know right now it's going to be very, very popular with some teenagers. But that's mainly because the lyrics are this, it's lyrics aimed at them. It's a pop rap album, realistically. That's what we're looking at. Lyrically, we've got a lot of broken hearts, suffering for love, superficiality of the modern world. There is a dig made at Big Pharma, which feels like a weird thing coming from a Russian artist in 2025, but okay. Lyrics about how the artist is so far from the world and so cold and disconnected and estranged from every. You know exactly what type of. It's basically mopey emo rap lyrics, but sort of dressed up in this modern sort of hard edge. It's packed full of lots of clever lines as well that don't really go anywhere. The deep observations, as I have here, deep observations of the world from an edgy teenager who feels like they're really, really smart. That's what this is not a teenager, or if it is a teenager, it's like the 19 end of the teenagers. Musically, it's not anything interesting. It's not anything horrible. It just is. It's an amalgamation of everything that is somewhat trendy sounding in 2025 slammed together in one album. This is an album I started listening to many, many times, and I kept getting sidetracked from it. And the reason for it is because, like I said, there's nothing here to grab the attention. It's not bad. It's just not interesting. And I know this is not a good selling point, and I'm not necessarily recommending this. I think that this is a good album to use as maybe a barometer for what Russian pop music feels like these days, right? There's just nothing memorable here. And I think this is a perfect example of when people say they hate pop music, it's not the super bombastic or ridiculous pop music, although obviously as teens or young adults, people will hate on that for image reasons. But I think when people honestly say they don't like pop music, and maybe there's a discussion about Taylor Swift to be had here. I don't know. I've never listened to Taylor Swift. I'm going to be completely honest, and I don't care to listen to Taylor Swift. She is the Harry Potter of music, in my opinion. It's probably really good. It's probably really fun. I just don't have the time or don't give a shit to actually like get into it. There are so many other things out there that I would rather be spending my time consuming. And what I was getting at, though, with pop music is that when people talk about hating pop music, I think it has to do with this idea of it not being, again, hyper-produced or something like that, but it just being almost like an attempt to appeal to everyone and and then failing at that ultimately. So I'm going to play a little bit of this so that you can get a hear for it. And you will hear, like, musically it's fine. And there are honestly tracks on this album that I could say that I enjoyed. But as a whole album, you know. And I have been talking about this as pop a lot, but this is very much positioned as a rap album, and you can hear that in the lyricist here. Like, it's not bad. And again, just like maybe Taylor Swift or Harry Potter, again, I cannot comment on that. But there's probably many reasons why people would actually enjoy this. I just don't really see it. It's fine. It's fine. But I'm gonna play a little bit more from some other places around. Like, there definitely are.
Я отрицаю идею везения. Делай, что должен, и будь, что будет. От жалости к
But like, does this track feel that much different from the previous one?
Дает мне преимущество. Моя, что малоимущая. Из какого ты теста, ножи или бегство? Скажи все как есть, да. Мальчики и сериальчики. Молодость не вечна, красота обманчива. Не она богиня, а ты просто удобный, как религия. Нельзя вылечить рану, пока не решишься сказать о ней вслух. Нельзя вылечить рану, пока не решишься сказать о ней вслух. Нельзя вылечить рану, пока не решишься сказать о ней.
Remember when I mentioned too, like, that amalgamation of all the sounds? Here we're gonna throw in the rock elements as well too, right? Why? Because other people out there enjoy this specific sound, so we have to make sure we include some of these tracks on here as well. I mean, maybe I'm being overly cynical here, I mean, I think you're getting the idea by this point in time. By themselves, these tracks are fine. They're not bad in any sort of way. They're well produced. They theoretically have some, like, kind of interesting lyrics, but as an entire package, just there's no feeling that you walk away from this album, that you walk away with from this album.
Заходим в город на слов, заходим в город, ты пив-пав.
So yeah, again, I talked about this album a lot. I'm not going to go into it any further because I feel like I've already kind of said everything that I have to say about that. It's fine. It's not bad. If you liked the sound, then go for it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just think that this is a very mid album in every sense of the word, in the sense that it just kind of exists. It's not bad. It doesn't stand out in any sort of way. It is middle of the road in 2025. And there are plenty of people to whom that appeals. So that is Любовь, побеждает, смерть by Playing the Angel. Yeah. Now, that technically is a rap album too, despite the fact that it doesn't feel like really any. It's every genre all at once. But yes, the top pick though, and what an album cover. This guy always wears that mask though too. So the Pennywise thing is definitely supposed to be. This is the album Noir by Brick Bazuka. Now Brick Bazuka here he's from an underground crew, the Chemadan group. Not a group, it's like a collective of rappers. I think it's Chemadan Clan, actually, but I might be off with that. This is good. This is like old school rap. It's a solid album, right? It's 45 minutes. We've got 19 tracks. Russian rap. This is proof that Russian rap is alive and well in the underground. And yeah, obviously we've seen that throughout the year with SoundCloud rappers and stuff of the sort, but this is that classic rap sound. With the beats on this album, it feels at times like a modern day equivalent to Wu-Tang's Enter the 36 Chambers, and I know that is a bold statement to make, but I'm specifically talking about the beats. They might be a little bit more produced than that, but yeah, lyrics revolve around just sort of rapping, and then also the streets, as cliche as that might sound. But yeah, a lot of times it just is kind of rapping for the sake of rapping, which is fine. There's nothing that's like, sometimes some of the best rap songs are just rapping for the sake of rapping. Production definitely is a bit heavier than Enter the 36 Chambers on a whole, but still, it's still fairly bare bones at some point. The thing that I thought was most interesting about this was that online in the rap circles, the discussion around this album was overwhelmingly positive, which is insane, right? Somebody always is taking a dump on an album, and I didn't see anybody hating on this thing, which I think is kind of blew my mind. I'm not going to lie. To Enter the 36 Chambers, I'm going to sort of jump into this one here, at least for the production and the beats.
Bazuka. Самый андеграундный звук в городе. Да что ты можешь сделать андеграунднее, чем этот звук?
Really sparse instruments, right?
Среди моих партнеров нету сук. Я хуй знаю, кто такой Лука. Шандер это вир, враждебен этот мир. Я дверь пинаю с пыра, откроется спирт. Вас бомбардировал крокодил.
Again, it's not exactly Enter the 36 Chambers, but you can get the comparison, I think, right?
До сих пор мы холдим Трампа. Ты не ходишь от компа, и твой психолог.
But we'll...
Я загибал на пальцах всех своих. Я загибал на пальцах всех твоих.
Like, this is very much not the 36 Chambers.
Я загибал на пальцах город психов. Живу будто айкюдза, спрошу с тебя за базар. Там под капотом муза, от нас выдадут лишь глаза. Никто не хочет быть спасенным, тогда себя спасай. Буду вождем дважды рожденным, и моя босс не суисайд. Как есть, иммунитет приобретенный. Значит, пока я здесь, я буду делать даже сонным. Тратил баксов тонну, хоть и ловил загоны. Переведите тронные, а в 3 ЖБ бетона. Хватит звонить Антону, он давно покинул Питер. Хватит ловить загоны, ляжу дома в монолите.
For one that's got a little bit more of the the Memphis sound as well.
Бьем игру своими силами, как так? Ты ищешь крошки на дне пока стал волосатым, как Чубака. Да я не верю людям, я верю знакам. Тут есть причины, бывало всяко. Идите нахуй, йо, get the fuck up. Мне уши больше не нужен саппорт. Будем прощаться, не будем плакать. Ломи пластмассы, котлеты с мака. Засел на блоке, считая странным тех, кто носит кроки. Тут кровопийцы выжмутся соки, да похуй на них всегда широкий. Шел с района, засел на блоке, считая.
I mean, again, if you don't understand Russian, then you're just going with the overall vibe. But even just with that, I think you can kind of get it. If you do understand Russian, the lyrics are not bad. Pretty good. Maybe not best of the year, but
Голос улиц горбится и так давно не брит. Голос улиц пишет советами кровь без фильтра. В его доме ветра, в его башке ветра. Не сойти с ума им помогала только вера. Раньше поклонялись им, да какого хера. Голос улиц остается на ушах как сера. Я меняю сферы, разгоняю сферу. Возьму панамеру себе, чтобы нет ньюэра. Накрывает голову, чтоб...
Alright, one last. Got that classic sort of ride off into the sunset. It is literally called like Into the Sunset. So just such an appropriate end to the album. And I feel like, and maybe it still does happen, but I do remember like 20, 25 years ago, that whole idea of at the end of the rap album, the artist would do sort of a victory lap. The final track would just sort of be this celebratory one where they were basically congratulating themselves for making such a kick-ass album or being such a good rapper. And while that's not exactly this, it does have a little bit of that energy, and I love it. I love it for that specifically. So yeah, that is the album Noir, and the artist is Brick Bazuka. Also, fantastic album artwork there too. Moving on to electronic music. This is... It's going in the electronic category. It's one of those that is kind of hard to pin down, but it's just a funky, jazzy little EP. We've got a little bit of the lo-fi hip-hop beats energy here. But it's the perfect thing to while away the sort of longer and longer evenings in... Well, I'm probably not in your house, but again, that sort of smoky atmosphere, the smoky, hazy atmosphere, that's kind of what this music feels like, you know, like a speakeasy type of thing, a glass of wine or whiskey. Arthur the Author is the artist of this EP, Light Goes Off, and we actually had an EP from him back in the first quarter, which was different. It was a little bit different than this one. I'm not going to get into it. You can go back, dig around for it if you want. But musically, this is just like one of those reminders that the autumn season doesn't really have to be a downer if you got the right soundtrack. And this is one of those that, you know, you could easily throw into your autumn rotation to give you a bit of a pick me up when you need it. It's also nice too because it's one of those albums. It's just very EPs releases that's so chill and laid back, but short. And so if you have it so that it repeats all, it just can sort of spin without end, and it doesn't really get old. It just has a very, very nice energy to it. Now, again, is this electronic music? Could this have been in hip hop? Like, maybe, yeah, but whatever. I had things pretty well split up this week, so. Yeah, the saxophone is great, though. It's such a great inclusion. No, they're not always there. We get a little bit of that sort of, it's just like 80s b-boy type energy. But there's the saxophone again. So yeah, like I said, just a funky, jazzy little EP. It's got some nice energy, got some nice vibes to the whole thing. But that is Light Goes Off by Arthur the Author. Now we get into the sort of electronic music. And the first of those releases is by an artist called Nocow. I'm assuming that's how I'm supposed to pronounce it, Nocow. And the album, I guess, is TAY UT G NI. Make of that what you will. I did not find any explanation for it. This is an electronic producer out of St. Petersburg. If you're familiar with Apparat or Moo Juice, then you could easily mistake his music, at least on this album, for those artists at times. But there is one glaring difference, and that is Nocow on this album heavily uses his own auto-tuned voice pretty much throughout the entire album. A lot of times it melds with the accompanying music and just becomes another layer, but there are a few tracks where it does feel as though it could perhaps be a little toned down. That was the one complaint I had with it. There are, especially here in the middle, you can see there's maybe a few tracks there where I felt the auto-tune voice was a little bit too front and center. But yeah, it's a very atmospheric release. And again, very similar to Apparat or Moo Juice. There are some tracks on this album which skew more instrumental, and then there are ones that feel kind of like this, like a bit more electro-popish, if you will. Again, I love the music. I'm not a huge fan of auto-tune. Auto-tune's one of those things that I'm pretty hit or miss on. But let's keep it moving along. Again, the voice here. Maybe dial it back just a little bit. No offense, Nocow, but and then you have like these very atmospheric ones, right? Almost a sense of unease on this one. I mean, it is called doldrum, so it's not exactly unease, but again, if you can deal with the auto-tuned vocals right there, kind of slammed right in your face, and you're either totally fine with that or it's not a problem for you, then yeah, this is a great album. If auto-tune is not your thing, or you can handle it in small doses, then this is maybe one to sort of take step by step and ingest in small doses. That said, Nocow as a producer is a really good producer, so in the future, hopefully there will be more releases with less auto-tune vocals, so we can kind of maybe compare them. But that is the album TAY UT G NI. TAY UT G NI? I have no idea. That doesn't mean anything to me. And that is the artist Nocow. You get the idea. All right, we're going to move on to what is the, at least for me, the top electronic album of the week. And this is an interesting one. This is honestly the album I probably had the most difficulty putting into words my thoughts on it this week. I listened to it pretty much every single day. This is one of the large ambient soundscape type albums, and it was one that was written, though, basically improvised in the studio. There's some live guitar in there, but it's one of those things where there's a musical through line here, right? So it's not just some ambient soundscape that was designed. Like the improvisation, you can hear it in the way that there are some musical ideas that carry these tracks forward. There is a sense of movement, albeit very slow in its unfolding, but it's still there, which is one of those things where I like that. I like the sort of long unfolding ones, but that aren't just drone and ambient, right? There's musically something going on there. The tracks are all based on the artist's memories of his trips and travels to Crimea in the past. And so it's one of those things where if you read the song titles, right? A Timid Dive, Seagull Over the Waves, Funicular to I Petri, right? Looking at the Clouds, Cloud Ziggurat, Song of the Megalith, Sunset on Demerji, Striving for the Surface. You can imagine yourself, or you can imagine a bird sort of hovering over the whitecaps, or the sensation of being underwater and then rising up to the air, feeling the push and demand in your ears. You can even kind of imagine riding a cable car up the side of a mountain and then eventually breaking through the clouds and coming up into the sunlight. You can actually hear that. I know that sounds weird, but it's one of those things where, yeah, it fits. He does a very good job of putting it all together. It's very relaxing music. It's the stuff that you could easily ignore if it was on in the background, but it's a really fantastic example of what good ambient lo-fi electronic music can be when it has a little bit of direction. This is also, I'm going to say, really headphone music. Or if you have a really good stereo system, then that would work, but you do want to kind of immerse yourself in it. I want to start with the Striving to the Surface one, because it's the one that's supposed to sound like you're underwater holding your breath. And this is a weird one to start with, but just close your eyes and think about the last time you were underwater. And how you can still hear things underwater, but there's that weird sensation to it. And the movement. You can hear that thrum in the background. Again, these are long tracks. It's going to be hard to me to accurately showcase a lot of this, but you can hear the bubbles there. You can hear the bubbles even better there. And I'll be honest, this track is not really one of my favorites, but I did want to include it because, like I said, I wanted to highlight like this idea of how this music does a good job of painting a picture. This is the one with the cable car up the side of the mountain. And there's a lightness to it, an airiness to it, a sense of kind of floating, which, again, if you're in a cable car, is completely on point. And this is the longest track on the album, which is probably also logical because I'm pretty sure the cable car ascents are not, short little things. But you get into this, and you can hear the fuzz in there, right? This is that part of the song. I jumped right into the middle of it, but this is that in the clouds. But you can hear those, arpeggios going up and down, and that sort of anticipation of coming through and finally reaching the top. Oh, and you can hear the strings of the guitar and the cables of the cable car. And now you've broken through the clouds and you're in the sunlight. I know but it's a very nice album in that regard. It does a very good job of putting it all together. The Sunset one is also quite good. There's like this fading energy on this track, or the seagull over the waves. Because if you remember, like how seagulls, they just kind of hover in one place, and there's that sort of back and forth movement. Evening, Nelly. Welcome back. So yeah, this is, like I said, this is one of those albums where read the song titles, get that image in your head, and then just kind of close your eyes and listen to the tracks. And a lot of this is going to be connected to the seaside or the mountains, a little bit of both. But it's nice. It's just a fun. It can kind of transport you away a little bit. It's very relaxing. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I came back to it almost every single day. That is, the name of the album is The Song of Megalith, and the artist is Moph, Moph. So that was, for electronic music, that was the top pick for me for the week. Moving on to rock and metal. All right, up first, we have a very, very short EP. The EP is Mad, and the group is Stuff. Really great naming, but anyway, it's just classic raw hardcore sound. Group out of Moscow. This is their 5th EP in 3 years. Just really fast, really tight. 8 minutes, all filler. 8 minutes, no filler. Just sort of like, aggressive fist pumping stuff. I'm just going to play like really quick snippets. You'll get the idea very quickly. So, again. Wait, what? That's interesting. Okay. We'll jump into another track. Pretty. Like that old school kind of hardcore punk sound. you get the idea. That is the EP Mad by Stuff. Again, if you like hardcore punk, then you'll like that. If that's not your thing, then you're probably not going to like that. The next release, though, it's a split, an EP, a split, whatever you want to call it. SVX/OVB. This is a reference to the airport in Yekaterinburg, and this is a reference to the airport in Novosibirsk. And that's because the two artists here, LESNIK and Холодный Год, are from Yekaterinburg and Novosibirsk, respectively. Honestly, LESNIK is a group that I absolutely loved. They kind of exploded onto the post-rock scene here last year. Their first EP was in 2023, but yeah, last year they were super busy. An LP in January, an EP in March, a split in April, another EP in November. It felt last year like every time I turned around, there was a new release from LESNIK. This year has been rather quiet. They had a single released in August, and then this split in October. So they've released 2 tracks this year, effectively, because this is a 2-track split, and there's 2 artists on it. But at the very least, we know that they're still out there. And yeah, the sound, too, has continued to develop. If you don't know their early sound, go check it out, too. It's also good. But this right here has gone... their early sound was a bit of that sort of raw post-rock sound. So it felt like something out of the forests of the taiga. And now it's this heavier, more atmospheric explosions in the sky type of post-rock. A little bit more of the modern post-rock sound, but it still feels not super... It doesn't feel generic. Like, it still feels like its own thing. The other group, Холодный Год, which translates as to cold year, I had not heard them before. I know that they had put out 2 EPs last year. I just did not listen to them. And their track... it's a little bit different, but it pairs well with LESNIK. There's a bit more of a distorted sound on the guitars, and that's paired together with a almost melancholic saxophone, which again contrasts quite well. Yeah, it's only 2 tracks, but you've got basically 18 minutes worth of material here. So this is a very sizable listen, but it is one that you can easily, again, just loop. Very nice. I'm going to jump in a little bit, though, because it's post-rock, so it takes a little bit to get revved up. It feels like there is some black metal DNA deep down in the equation here, and that's why the sound is still a little unique and not raw necessarily, but a little darker and a little bit heavier than you would maybe normally expect from this type of post-rock sound. Again, right? Loud, then it goes back to quiet, and then it goes back to loud. It's post-rock. Lots of uses of crescendos and all that fun stuff. Honestly, really good track. I am excited to hear more from LESNIK. Yeah, in the future, I do hope that they are cooking up another full length of some stuff similar to that. But I do want to highlight the other track too, because I do think it is also Right, you can hear the guitar tone's a little bit different. There's the saxophone. Right, you can hear, like, the saxophone feels a little bit sad. Not horribly so, but just, you know, a little blue. But the saxophone's there too. It doesn't disappear. It's not like a one-trick pony type thing where it just is there for a little bit. The saxophone does not go anywhere. It's with us throughout the entire track. So yeah, if you're looking for some more post-rock, which there's a lot of good post-rock in Russia. I know post-rock is one of those genres that is kind of faceless, and you could probably just put on most groups for a lot of people, and that would be the end of it. They wouldn't really notice the difference. Yeah, there still is a lot of good stuff here in terms of post-rock. So this is a split by LESNIK and Холодный Год. The name of it is SVXOVB. Just about 20 minutes of just really nice, beautiful instrumental rock from one group out of Yekaterinburg and another one out of Novosibirsk. The final rock and metal release is by group Meschera, and the album is Legends of the Ancients. It's actually interesting. I did not realize this with Spotify. They sometimes, I don't know if the artists do this or if it's something that Spotify does. The name and the album title and the album and the songs are all translated here, because as you can see from the album artwork, well, you probably can't make out the band name. That's a classic metal trope, but the album name down here is in Cyrillic, Легенды Древних, which, yeah, Legends of the Ancients is how it translates. But anyway, that's kind of besides the point. This is the type of folk metal that I can get behind. It's got the female vocals, it's got the traditional instruments woven into the fabrics of the songs, but they're just not thrust front and center. Most importantly, though, this is folk metal that feels like it wants to be symphonic black metal half of the time, which is kind of awesome. It feels like a coven that made a pact with darker forces, and they're kind of frolicking around like quaint little forest pagans half the time, only to transform into these behooved monstrosities when dusk falls, and then transform back into rosy-faced innocents when the dawn comes, who are just simply paying tribute to their ancestors. Yeah, let me just get into it. Let's go with. I'm lost because I'm used to the titles being in Russian at this point in time. Because I still do use Yandex Music on my phone, and yeah. Like, this is the type of folk metal that I can fully get behind. Also, fantastic album artwork too, not gonna lie. It's got like some awesome Halloween vibes, and we're in October now, so. Like, instrumentally, we are pushing for the symphonic black metal, but then the vocals balance everything out just a little bit. Right? Like, what is that? I love that. Such a juxtaposition going on right there. Also, the singing is really good, right? It's well delivered, really nice vocals. This is a relatively new group too. Their first release came out in 2023, as far as I understand. So I actually heard an acoustic album from them last year, but I didn't bother to go check out their like regular releases. And the acoustic album kind of. We got blast beats. We got blast beats. But the vocals. It's got that sort of traditional vocal, the harmonies and everything back there. And then the final track is just straight up a very straightforward folk. It's still got the metal elements in it too, but it is much folkier. I mean, realistically, you could probably throw in a little bit of like alt metal, Evanescence style, or is that alt rock? I don't know. It doesn't even really matter. So yeah, you get the idea. Honestly, I've talked about folk metal, I feel like quite a bit in the last few months. There's been a number of releases. And I always come back to this idea that like folk metal oftentimes feels kind of gimmicky, but this right here feels, and some of the other releases I've talked about in the past, I've said that like it's like there's some good stuff going on here, but you know it still feels maybe not full. This feels like it's all gelled together. It's that addition of the sort of just like straight up symphonic black metal type blast beats and double bass drum going with the like really intense guitar strumming at certain points, but everything just kind of gels together here. And I think this is maybe it's not a unique sound. I don't know. I'm again not fully versed in the depths of the folk metal subgenre, but yeah, this is a very good sound. And again, I think it's one of those that it's heavy, but because the vocals are so light and airy most of the time and pleasant, that it can still appeal to a much larger audience than a typical metal release of this type would. So that is Meschera, and the release is Legendy Древних, or Legends of the Ancients. And that's the best rock and metal album of the week. And now we've hit the tab limit. But we are moving on to pop and indie. And yes, this coming out of nowhere to absolutely fit the vibe of wearing flannel shirts and hand-knitted beanie while sitting on the porch of a cabin in the woods, watching the changing leaves rustle while slowly slipping on a mug of hot tea from which a few lethargic tendrils of steam venture upward. This is that sort of vibe. I don't know, Pinterest that or something. This is indie folk music. It's got the energy of early Fleet Foxes, Bon Iver, which is a sound that I do miss, and it's nice to get in small doses. Lyrics are in Russian, which this is like a genre which is not super common, or even I would say maybe popular in Russia. So kind of a surprise. And this is their first release as far as I know. The EP says single, but you know how I like to do things. This is an EP, Ветер, which is wind, and the group is Prоспал лето, or I overslept, I slept through the summer. I'm just going to play it. You'll hear it immediately. Got the banjo. A banjo in Russia? What? I mean, how many times this year have we heard metal with like the push button accordions, especially black metal? This is the first banjo, as far as I can tell. This is straight up like old Bon Iver, right? I'm not hallucinating. We have the clapping. The lyric literally says, "Put on your warm sweater." Like, I don't, it's good. It's very good. I kind of love these 3 tracks. So, like I said, I'm curious to see what the group does in the future. If we'll get more of this, or if this is just a one-off sound that they're experimenting with. But I feel like you probably don't learn to play the banjo and then just abandon it, you know? I feel like we'll hear more from them along this same trajectory. So yeah, that is the release Ветер by the group Prоспал лето. Moving on, we have another EP, and this time it is Blüdze, and the group is Settlers. This is a indie group out of St. Petersburg. They evidently, again, I don't know much about them, evidently are a little bit more well-known for recording their own takes on traditional folk songs. But here we have really just a delightful little EP with indie in its varying forms. They even have an acoustic version of the final track of the 3. But these are all their own songs, their own lyrics, everything like that. Just a nice, fun, pleasant little indie EP. Got good energy. Not the best album artwork, though. It's kind of, you know, it's fine. White text on a white plate, though. It's just, like, too much. Like, the tracks do play around with slightly different sounds. I mean, they're somewhat similar, but they're not. There's enough variation. Like, again, this feels like there's maybe a little bit of Muse in there. I know that's maybe an oversimplification of this sound, but then and then dropping into this feels a lot like Muse, especially more modern Muse, I guess. Then yeah, we've got like something a little bit lighter, just more indie, if you will. Anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, just nice indie release. Very, very pleasant. And who knows? Like I said, I have not listened to this group before. That tends to be the situation when talking about music here. But this is nice. And like I said, this is their first release where this has been all of their own material. If they rework traditional songs in a similar vein, that's also interesting too, but it is always, that's kind of limited. So obviously if they are feeling a bit more inventive or adventurous and they decide to strike off in a new direction, this is promising. So that's Blüdze is the name of the EP and the group is Settlers. All right, we have 3 left. 2 in pop and indie, and then 1 kind of less. But yeah, this is Созвездие Отрезок is the name of the group, and the album is 3000 лет на сцене. На сцене. I'm absolutely butchering that word. There are still weird little combinations that I just struggle with. На сцене. Not scene. It's not scene. Anyway, 3,000 years on stage. I do not. I'm like, my wife is going to tell me the pronunciation. I'm going to kick myself because it's such an easy one, but I cannot get it to come out right at 11 in the evening. Regardless, I talked about this group back in April, and they had released an album of new songs at that point in time. This you could possibly consider a new batch as well. In reality, these are all reinterpretations of songs that they have released in years past, but completely reimagined. Sometimes the lyrics have been translated into Japanese, as you can maybe see on the 4th track right there. You can see a piano version, 2 piano versions, a remix, and then the 2025 and Trap 3000. The genres have been switched up on some of these, the instrumentation and tempo adjusted on others. All the tracks are effectively new versions, some in such a way that you might not even recognize them if you are familiar with the original. So I guess, yeah. And realistically, since I was not really familiar with the original tracks, then this is all new material for me, and I'm assuming that most of you are in the same boat. So while this is not like a game changer in terms of an album, right, it's just another nice release from this group, and it does show how flexible and creative they can be. So right, we got the Trap 3000. Obviously, we've got to have the trap beat in there.
Месяц, лети поскорей по бульварам, по улицам ночи.
Vocally, you can hear how this would be probably originally a much lighter and playful song, right? As opposed to the Doom version.
Клещ на спине был на твоей спине, а теперь
Got a little bit of almost a country western, a spaghetti western sort of sound at moments. And then this is the one that has been translated into Japanese. So again, right, like obviously piano versions are piano versions. The final remix too is a little bit of an interesting one, but the first 4 tracks are the piano versions are really nice too. I won't lie, but the first 4 are very different in terms of style, right, across them, and just kind of an interesting little experiment. So that is the group Созвездие Отрезок, and that is their album 3000 Years on the Stage, or 3000 лет на сцене. Sure. All right. Now, the final release, the top pick for pop and indie, and realistically the top pick of the week, is Ural Batyr by the group YOLA. This is actually a group that people outside of Russia might have heard of, thanks to TikTok. One of their songs, Homai, if I'm not mistaken, kind of blew up on Russian TikTok, and I think it actually kind of blew up on TikTok abroad earlier this year when it was first released. This is a modern version. Like, the first track is traditional folk folk music out of Bashkiria, right? It's got the instruments. And the last track is kind of that too, right? A little bit more modern take, but realistically, this is just a modern version of Bashkirian traditional folk music that goes from electropop to hip-hop adjacent music to radio rock and then back. It is a little bit of everything. And the reason I want to take a second here, and I mentioned how on Playing the Angel, right, one of the first albums I talked about, how that sound of it just being an amalgamation of everything and kind of sounding like nothing all at once. You can put everything together and make it feel like a slurry where everything is effectively lost and nothing stands out. Or you can slam everything together and it feels chaotic, but also super unique. And this is the latter of those two. Like, what do we have here? Like the tracks here that do feel more native in terms of singing and instruments, because there is a lot of that there, and that does make this feel a little bit more memorable than Playing the Angels release. But there's still electronics laced through everything, a lot of modern musical trappings that feel like they should be incongruent, but they are not. And I think that's realistically the most interesting thing about it. I'm just going to play the music here. Listen to how much is going on just right now off the bat. Almost certainly a traditional instrument in the background. Throat singing. Trap drums. And I'm pretty sure there was a mouth harp in the beginning. And now we have rapping. Kind of. There are so many ideas musically happening here. If you were to write this all out on paper, it would seem just like an absolute mess, just a hodgepodge of everything and anything, but it somehow works. And it's memorable. That's the most important thing. Even though, and this is the same thing, right? Like in Russian, this is not Russian. So the majority of people in Russia also have no idea what's going on. The lyrics are based on an epic story from Bashkir folklore, Ural Batyr, which is like a creation myth. Warrior goes and battles the forces of nature. The songs tell that story. I don't know. I'm just here for the music. This is the track that, if I'm not mistaken, was relatively popular, was like kind of making waves on TikTok. Now, part of the reason it was so popular is it is quite similar to a track by Aigel from a few years back, but this is like a really good track, right? Like there's no denying that. That bass line. But again, right? The way the traditional instruments are applied, and even maybe the non-traditional ones, so it's just like unusual instrumentation is thrown in on top of everything, like on top of these modern musical sounds, but in such a way that it, like, I feel like there's a goddamn didgeridoo in the background half the time, but I don't question it. It's just there, and it feels like it should be there. Like, it's, yeah. And then you get, like, the Rammstein guitars here. And the mouth, like, there's so much mouth harp, or the equivalent to the mouth harp on this. Which, can you imagine? I'd just be like, let's make an album in 2025 with a shit ton of mouth harp. But it works. I have no idea what's going on, but I don't care, right? Like, it's fun, it's chaotic, and there's just like, I think that's also one of the big things. Playing the Angels release felt so morose and dejected and just bored. Like, this trio right here feels energized, just like to the maximum possible level. Also, this track feels like it could possibly be on the Tron Ares soundtrack, like the Bashkirian version of more modern Nine Inch Nails. If you haven't heard the Tron Ares soundtrack, go check that out too. It's pretty goddamn good. It's got the cyberpunk sort of thing. There's so much going on with this album. So many just different sounds and different ideas, but none of them are bad. And again, I don't know what's going on lyrically. I can't tell you how to appraise that. So I'm just looking at this wholly musically, right? For all of you non-Russian speakers out there, I am in the same boat with you here, and the majority of people in Russia are in the same boat. Musically, this is super interesting, it's fun, and it's catchy. Like, even though you don't know what's going on, even though you can't sing the hook, like, it's albums like this where I don't question the K-pop phenomenon, right? Because the music is just so good. It gets its hooks into you, and that's it. Like, you're into it. So, the thing that's special about this one, though, is that it is not so hyper-produced, and that it does have that traditional sound to it. And that gives it personality. And I think that's hella important. And I do think that, honestly, from a pop music perspective, this is probably going to be, like, when discussions come to album of the year, especially for pop music, I think this is going to be in the discussion, because it's just a really well-produced, really fun, really good, and honestly really interesting and unique album. And that is Ural Batyr by the group YOLA out of Bashkiria. So, and that is it for pop and indie. But we have one album left, and this is an interesting one. This is a new album, new in quotation marks, in quotes, from the classic Soviet post-punk or rock group Kino. And the album is Molny Indri. I think that's Indri is a Hindu deity, if I'm not mistaken. Also a creation mythos. Kino is probably one of the most famous Russian rock groups of all time. Not probably. They are one of the most famous Russian rock groups of all time. And I think probably in Russia today, they are the biggest Russian rock group in terms of the classics. Definitely the most influential to this day. And actually one of the groups that people outside of Russia and outside of the Soviet Union had probably heard of. This quote-unquote new album is really just a bunch of re-recordings of the instruments. These are all songs that have been released in one form or another before. The vocals here were all pieced together word by word from previous recordings. The frontman of Kino, Viktor Tsoi, died in a motorcycle accident in 1990. So, yeah, 35 years ago. The reason I'm talking about this is because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not like a Kino fanatic. I know some of their most famous songs. Obviously, they're kind of unavoidable here. But I didn't know. I don't think any of these tracks. Разреши меня, I did know, and then maybe Kamchatka I'd heard before. Anyway, I had not heard most of these songs before because I just don't. I haven't listened to all of the classics of American rock. So, like, you know, for those who, though, are kind of in a similar boat and who maybe have never heard of Kino before or just want to maybe check out what, like, kind of classic Russian rock sounds like, one of the most influential groups, this album, I think, is a pretty good place to start, even though these aren't the original recordings. I think that they feel fresh, like the production feels good, and I assume that they are not far off. We're going to talk about why this is also kind of a problematic album. But yeah, I think for people who are less familiar with Kino, and like I said, are maybe interested and want to find out, this is not a bad introduction. It's not a greatest hits. It's the sound is going to be a little bit more refined than those recordings from like the 80s and that were just done with whatever equipment existed in the late Soviet Union, right? So this is definitely going to have a better sound. I'll just play a little bit. The reason that this is, again, kind of a discussion that I want to have is, like I said, these tracks have all been released before. This is one of those situations where I don't know why we are releasing this in 2025. Maybe it's Soy's son, looking to make a quick buck because he is now touring with the group as the lead singer. Let the music play for a second. You can understand why this sound, like this, could easily have been popular too, like in the West in the late 1980s, right? Try to highlight a few of the different sounds. Decent amount of reggae style cuts too. What I will say too is the discussion around this album online is quite split. A lot of people don't see the need for this, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But a lot of people do think that the updated sound is fine. A lot of people prefer it to the, and people who are older who say they've been listening to Kino for a very long time, they say that like it's nice to have a cleaner sound, one that perhaps the artists would have preferred, would have liked to make 30 some years ago, right? It's a sound that in 2025 you can tell is old, but it also still feels like you can understand why it's still a popular group, right? Like, it's old, but it doesn't feel outdated. So, now the question is, again, obviously, why do we have this in 2025? What is the point? Why are we still having this weird situation in the music industry of necrophilic milking, effectively? I understand, or I guess I understand now why in the 1990s and even into the 2000s, and obviously in the 1980s, but realistically in the 90s and 2000s, when CDs were selling and record labels, when an artist would die, they would put together a retrospective, and they would try to include unreleased material and things like that, right? For collectors, for people who maybe didn't have an album, right? Like, it was a way for them to sell more records. I don't get how that works in the streaming era. Like, I understand that more streams equal more income. I get that. But first of all, the amount of revenue that artists get from streaming is incredibly small. So there's that to be contended with. But the other thing is, you can just go listen to any of the other albums right? If all of these tracks are already available, I understand that maybe it's a way to get people who, again, like I said, maybe have not listened to it or maybe hadn't listened to Kino for a while. It's like, oh, hey, maybe I should go listen to this new album and I can go get some news. But so maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it is. It's now going to be a situation where instead of seeing new boxed sets or new greatest hits albums, we're going to see these types of things where unfinished demos get reworked using audio splicing technology so that people will be reminded of the band and that perhaps their remaining family members can figure out a way to see a slight increase in their streaming revenue. I don't know what that is, but it does raise an interesting question, at least with the album. Again, just before I get off, is the album is Kino and the group is Kino, and the album is Molni Indri or Indri. I don't know how the pronunciation of the name goes. And again, if you're not familiar with the group, I think this is a fine place to start off and one to check out. So is this a reissue? Is this a new album? I don't really know. None of these songs are new necessarily, but they are new in this formation. But then again, the band hasn't really existed in a lot of ways since 1990. It's a complicated thing too. When it comes to this idea of like dead artists and what to do with all that, we've seen this issue come up in the music industry before with when they had holographic Tupac at Coachella, right? And it's, when do you let the dead go, especially as performing artists and stars? And it's one of those situations where, especially as AI slop and all that stuff gets better, but also more prevalent, but also better, that we run into an issue of like, are they ever going to die, or are we going to be stuck with these artists forever? Not that that's a bad thing, right? But like maybe just move on. I was thinking a bit about. I really like the author David Foster Wallace, as cliche and hipster as that may be. And he was working on a book when he died, The Pale King. And I'm pretty sure I bought The Pale King. After a number of years after he died, they released The Pale King as much as was completed and in the order that they thought made the most sense. And I remember reading it, and I remember seeing the flashes of greatness. I remember seeing kind of the idea of where it was going, but ultimately it just wasn't anything. There were excerpts and snippets, and there were parts of the book that I still remember, even though it's been a very long time since I read it. But ultimately, it just felt like sketches. It feels like when you go to an art exhibition and you see, it's like when you go to an art exhibition and you see the final like sketches or prints that a master painter was working on before they died, for example, right? And would I want to see an unfinished painting of Michelangelo pieced together by AI, or even by other artists using the same technique and the same, like, no, just don't. Would I want to see The Pale King brought to completion by some super intelligent program that is able to mimic David Foster Wallace? Like, no, right? And I think with musicians, especially in 2025 and as we move forward, it's just one of those things where, like, obviously we want to keep listening to that music, and there's no problem with that. But with this album, like this Kino album, this is not the first time, like I said, that these songs have been released. In fact, it happens pretty regularly here. And obviously with the music industry, it's likely just a cash grab, but it's likely just a cash grab in all those industries. So it's difficult, right? I don't want to gatekeep. Again, a lot of people, especially people outside of Russia, have never heard of Kino before, or maybe have heard of him in passing, and that's the extent of it. As an introduction, this is good. Or as a sampler to get an idea of what the group is all about, that's fantastic. But for people in, I don't know, in Russia, it just feels unnecessary. And I think that is what a lot of the discussion around this release has been. It's just, why? Why are we doing this? And I'm sure we're going to see this in, like, let's be real, when Bob Dylan finally passes away, we are going to be getting recordings and bootlegs and stuff for the next 30 goddamn years, right? But it's just like, I mean, is it necessary? Like, maybe we'll just just dump everything online as like a massive file, let the fans go through it, and by and large, just let the artist rest at that point in time. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. That's one of those fun technology ethical topics that we're going to have to be dealing with probably sooner rather than later. But that's it for the first week of October releases. We have, it's kind of a nice mixed one. It's kind of keeping up. I don't know. We'll see. There's really not too much more to add to that. I'll be back next Thursday again to do more music. Probably 14 more releases. That's kind of my benchmark, my goal these days. It's kind of easy. I can usually do like an EP and an album each day. It kind of balances out pretty well. I'll be back for the news on Sunday evening, and then next Wednesday evening as well at 9 p.m. Moscow time. But everyone have a nice evening or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Take care of yourselves. I will see you when I see you, and until then, пока-пока.